Hello and welcome to First Team All Vibes, your favorite sports podcast with all of the best vibes. You guys already know how we do it around here. I am alone today. I know, sadness. Small violin, you know. It is Marissa, your favorite vibe connoisseur on this podcast. I am without my co-host Anthony today. You know, some weeks it's just harder to get together. So I am alone today. But I am excited, guys, because there's a lot to talk about. As always, we know the NBA and we know that it just never stops moving. Things just get crazier and crazier every week. I feel like it's like I will edit one episode and then the next week there's like 10 different plot lines that completely contradict what we were talking about last week. So that is pretty much going to happen again. But without further ado, let's dive into it. But before we do, please make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you guys are not already subscribed. I always forget to say it at the beginning of the episode, so I'm saying it now instead of the end. So please do subscribe to this channel. If you're not watching on YouTube, you can be. We are First Team All Vibes on YouTube. And if you'd prefer to listen to us, you can do that as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just saying, First Team All Vibes everywhere. Also on Instagram and TikTok. So make sure you do all the stuff. You know, do all the stuff. Engage with the algorithm, comment, like, all the stuff. It really means a lot. But that being said, let's get into the meat of this video. Now, let's start with the West, as we always do, because it is literally the wild, wild West out here. And it always is, but I think it's been a little bit extra wild lately. Obviously, I think that this has kind of been a theme throughout the season, and I'm sure it will continue to be a theme based on last year and based on how this season has been. But all of the top teams, basically, with the exception of OKC, who is still firm in the 1 seed right now, are only separated by a game or less. A lot of these teams are tied, and a few of them are separated by 1 game, maybe 2 games at the very bottom of even the play-in. So yeah, it's been crazy, but I want to start with the number 1 and number 2 seeds, which are currently OKC and the Spurs. Let's start with OKC. Now, since we last talked, they had been beaten by the Spurs 3 times, and they had also been beaten, I think at the time it was just by the Wolves, but since then they have also lost to the Suns, and they were blown out by the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, I don't know if you guys already saw that. I'm sure you did, but if you didn't, yeah, OKC was blown out by the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, just in case you didn't think that you heard me correctly, you did. Crazy. And I think that it really comes down to something that I've been saying for a while now, and something that I've been noticing in all of these losses. OKC does not have a very good offense. In the very least, I guess you could say they just don't have a really consistent offense. And if Shea is off at all, they are basically not really in these games the way that they should be. Like, their defense is always good, or at least it's always well above average, let's just say. Even if it's not elite every game, I feel like it's always really good. But if Shea is not having an efficient night, which realistically he won't every night, and you know that's been happening the last few games that he's been not as efficient, they don't really have as good a chance as you would think, even against some of these quote-unquote lesser teams. In fact, their last game, guys, they played the Jazz, and they had to go to overtime to beat them, and they only won by a few points. So I think that just shows, you know, OKC, they're not looking so perfect. You know, it's a lot of people, I think, thought in the beginning of the season, or even, you know, just a few weeks ago, right? People thought like this team is going to go breeze through the season. They're going to have no issues. But I think that clearly has been proving to be not true. And a big conversation that I've been seeing with OKC is, do they need to make a trade? And you know, I've kind of heard it go both ways. I've heard some people say, like, there's no need to overreact. You know, they don't necessarily need to make any big fuss. But I just feel like it's kind of, at this point, I think that they should make a trade, in my opinion. Because if they really want to stay on top and not just, like, arguably risk even getting booted out. Let's just say that they play, I'm not exactly sure, I don't have the standings in front of me. Let's just say they play the 8 seed Suns as the number 1 seed right now. They could very well lose to the Suns. And that might sound crazy, but there have been several games where the Suns have taken them all the way to the end. There is now 2 games where the Suns, in one of them, beat them in crunch time, and the other one very nearly beat them, like lost to them by just a few points. And so, if you told me that the Suns somehow pulled out that series, I would not be shocked. And again, I think that a big reason for that is that they just do not have the offense to be consistent against good offensive teams. I don't think that it's a coincidence that they almost lost to the Jazz, who is amazing on offense. I don't think it's a coincidence that they lost to the Hornets, who can really shoot threes well and can, put up some good offensive production. And so I think that it's just this common thread of, there's just certain teams that you're not going to be able to outscore, and it doesn't really matter how good your defense is. If you're playing a really good offense, you still have to score more than them, right? Like at the end of the day, Nico Harrison defense wins championships. At the end of the day, you got to score more than the other team. And that's just, that's something that OKC is struggling with right now. So I just feel like they have all of the picks in the world. They have all of the assets in the world, right? And they have more to spare. So I kind of feel like, why not just get a good shooter? At least one, maybe two. Why not make a little splash and make your team even better? Because I just feel like right now, this is looking like it could legitimately, do I think they're going to lose the 1 seed? No. I think they're probably going to keep the 1 seed at this point because they are at least, I think, 5 or 6 games up on the 2nd seed. So unless Shai gets injured, really, I don't see that happening because I think that it's obvious that if something happened to Shai at this point, I used to think that wouldn't make a difference. I'm not going to lie to you. I remember saying at the beginning of the season that, even if Shai got hurt right now, if he missed 20 games, I think they'd be fine. I don't think that anymore because honestly, he's the only one that can carry that offense, and sometimes even that is not enough. So, all it takes is a little bit of time for Shai off, and I think that they could potentially slip from the 1 seed. But I don't think that that's likely, barring that happening. So I think that they'll keep the 1 seed, but will they make it past the 2nd round of the playoffs with all of these stacked teams that get in the West? Like when you talk about the Spurs, and you talk about the Rockets, and you talk about the Nuggets, again, when you even talk about the Suns and even the Lakers, right? Like when they're playing well, their offense is their calling card. So I don't know. I just feel like we'll see what happens with OKC, but they are 5-5 in their last 10 games. And, obviously that's not great. So we will see what happens with that. But I just seriously think like they need to do something to beef up their offense. And I'm not convinced that that is on the current team. So we'll see what they do. They might just write it out, but I don't know. They could potentially regret that in the postseason. So speaking of slight struggles, I want to talk about the Spurs next. So they were 5-5 in their last 10 games. They just beat the Lakers last night. But even then, guys, I got to tell you, they did not look amazing. And I'm going to kind of tell you a little bit about what Anthony told me. He watches literally every single game for the Spurs. And this is also something that I've noticed. But these are the teams that they lost to, recently. They lost to the Grizzlies, the Blazers, the Cavs, the Jazz, and obviously they lost to the Knicks in the NBA Cup. I'm counting that NBA Cup game in the losses because I think that although it doesn't count for the regular season, it still counts for, just the quality of their play, right? And something that I've noticed, and I think something that Anthony has been kind of talking about as well, is, is their youth and inexperience kind of starting to show? Like, obviously they went through a hot streak in the beginning of the season, but are they kind of starting to slow down, right? Like if they're not consistently hitting their shots, they're making silly mistakes. Fox has not really been playing great. I feel like he had a stretch when he first came back where he was playing amazing, consistently putting up crazy numbers. He's just been kind of, I guess, I don't know if it's that he's been in a shooting slump or that he's just like not playing as well, but like, I don't even know how many points he had yesterday against the Lakers, but the game before that, he had like 9 points in one of their losses. So I think that that's also a factor against the Grizzlies. But according to Anthony, these are their issues, okay? So I'm sharing this on behalf of him. Since you guys don't have him, you can still get his perspective, okay? So 1, perimeter defense and offense issues. 2, Castle and Harper showing inexperience with dumb fouls. So again, that's where that kind of like youth and experience factor comes in. And Sochan playing low IQ. I don't even know if I said his friggin' name right. But I don't even think he's playing right now, actually. I think that he's out. But yeah, so, they're just having some issues, I think, with maybe execution, maybe not shooting as well as they have in the past. And obviously, not to mention, like, they keep getting hit by these Wemby injuries. Thankfully, like, he hyperextended his knee, I don't know if we had already talked about that. I don't think we did. But thankfully his was not as bad as like, Jokic, who's going to be out a month. He's only been out a few games. He's already back again. He played on a back-to-back, but he continues to be on this minute restriction and continues to come off the bench, which, we can only imagine. I feel like that's not ideal for them. I mean, they're winning some games, obviously. Still, they're the second seed, but they're still only one game up on the third seed, I believe, or maybe they're not even a game up. It how it is in the West. It's like a half game. It's like a tiebreaker. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how they do. They did beat the Lakers, but the Lakers were also down LeBron James and Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura. So we were missing literally 3 of our starters. So, they still didn't play great. I'm not going to lie. I think that if the Lakers had even just Austin Reeves, even just LeBron, they probably would have won that game because it was pretty much all the Luka Doncic show. And speaking of the Luka Doncic show, let's move on to the Lakers. So, before that game yesterday against the Spurs, they were undefeated in 2026. They beat, I want to say, the Pelicans, or is that right? Yeah, they beat the Pelicans, they beat the Grizzlies twice, and one other team, I think. And they looked pretty good. They are still 13-0 in clutch games, guys. They have not lost a clutch game. And in case you're wondering, clutch game is apparently described as a game that's within 5 points in the last 5 minutes. So they have not lost a close game. Every single time they get beat, including last night's game against the Spurs, it's in double digits, which is not great, especially because a lot of those games are against good teams. Obviously, that's not ideal, but I think that they've honestly been making some good strides. I think that they've been looking a lot better. They've been playing with a lot more intensity. Luka has just been playing like way better really since the start of the new year. Obviously, he's a top 5 player kind of no matter what. But I think that when he's playing MVP level, obviously that elevates the team to a whole new level. And I think that he's been playing that way. And yesterday against the Spurs, I mean, he was elite. I mean, it kind of makes me sad that a 38-point triple-double performance from Luka was not enough to win. But again, we had so many absences that it's kind of, it's hard to generate offense when we're missing our 2 best and arguably maybe, sometimes our 3rd best or, 4th best or whatever, 5th best offensive players. So yeah, that's an issue. LeBron and Luka are finally finding chemistry though. And it's kind of funny because on last week's episode, I was talking about how they're kind of like bad influences on each other sometimes, and how they both kind of get into this mode sometimes when they're losing where they kind of stop trying. And I think that they kind of feed off of each other in a bad way where their energy kind of just messes with the whole team. At the end of the day, like, I think that happened in the Pistons game. I think that happened in the Rockets game. They just kind of get in this mode where it's like we're losing and, LeBron stops trying and Luka might make some mistakes and then the whole vibe kind of shifts, And I was talking about how that never happens with Austin Reeves, how he's like the one player that like never gives up. And I think that that's why him and Luka are good for each other, why they have such good stats together, because he never drops that energy. And so he pushes Luka to be, high energy and like lead the team on that level. But LeBron's been playing a lot better since the start of the new year. Obviously with Austin Reeves out, he's kind of had to, and he's been playing great. Like he's had some amazing performances, really high efficiency, really clean basketball, not turning over the ball a lot like he was previously. But I will say the one thing with that's making me a little bit nervous is, he still can't play back-to-backs. Recent outlay old, right? Like he has foot arthritis, he has sciatica, like obviously he is 41 years old. Like he is capable of playing on that level, but my worry is how long, how much. Austin Reeves is still going to be out the rest of January. Like earliest he could come back is the last week of January, but I would guess that it might not be until at earliest the beginning of February. Hopefully so, honestly, but I don't want him to rush back either because he has a calf injury and, those can be a little bit risky, we all know. But the problem is that, Luka is already taking on such a heavy burden, and I mean, he can handle it to an extent, but LeBron is also being forced to take on a heavy burden. He's the second ball handler on this team when Austin is out. And, when Austin was in, they were giving a lot of those responsibilities to Austin for a reason, because that takes a lot of energy out of LeBron, and LeBron having to score 25, 30 points takes a lot out of him, and as somebody who's 41 years old, he can't necessarily consistently do that. And I think that we're kind of starting to see that already, which makes me nervous because, again, we're only like a week and a half into 2026 and he hasn't been having to carry that load for so long. He didn't play yesterday on the back-to-back against the Spurs. He's questionable for their game tomorrow against Milwaukee. And we'll see if he plays, but it still makes me nervous that he's questionable after already missing a back-to-back. And, again, it's just kind of this question of, he already misses one game and he's not eligible for postseason awards, which I kind of figured was going to be the case, to be honest. He's already missed so many games, but still, I'm just a little bit worried because we need him to be good for the playoffs. And, if we want any chance to do anything, and it's a little bit worrisome. And again, it makes me think like what's going to happen next season. Like this sciatica, this arthritis are not just injuries that necessarily heal, right? Like these are nagging injuries. And so that's going to be something to monitor. But again, I will say that he's playing much better and that him and Luka are developing a really good two-man game that makes me happy to see because that has been something that the Lakers really have been lacking. That being said, the one other thing I want to talk about with the Lakers is Deandre Ayton. And this has been kind of like a big conversation in the Laker world recently. Deandre Ayton is not playing great. He had a really good start to the season. He was scoring really efficiently. He was giving a lot of effort. And one of his quotes, even in the beginning of the season, was like, I think it was even more than one quote. He was saying it pretty consistently that I'm doing whatever JJ needs me to do. And I am here to be that defensive presence, that defensive anchor, which the team needs. Let's be honest. The Lakers are not known for their defensive prowess right now, right? Like they need all of the defensive effort and presence that they can get. And lately, Ayton has just not been providing that. He has had some really underwhelming performances. And pretty much every big game that the Lakers have had recently, pretty much in the past month or so, Ayton has been outplayed by those centers, right? Like he's been outplayed by Alfred Şengün. He's been outplayed by Steven Adams. He's been outplayed by, the Pistons. He's been outplayed by Wemby and Cornette. Pretty much every big game that they've had where there's any kind of like competent center, not just lottery teams, like he has not been playing great. And I think we're starting to kind of see that question of, okay, these are the motor concerns, right? Like at first, I think that he was basically telling the Lakers, like, well, I just need to get more touches, right? Like, I need to be more involved in the offense. But then at that point, the question becomes, okay, but why do you need 10 shots to be doing your job, right? Like, that's kind of crazy to me that you would need to be getting a bunch of shots because it's not like he's not getting any shots. Like he's still putting up numbers. And, for example, yesterday, I think he was like 4 for 10. He's not as efficient maybe as he usually is. Like they're purposely trying to get him involved and he's not scoring. He's turning it over and he's still not really trying on defense. So it makes me wonder, like, is he kind of just like internally shutting off? Does he feel the kind of like heat? There was this one scene the other day. I don't remember what game it was in, honestly. I think it was against one of the Grizzlies games. I don't completely remember. I think he made some kind of mistake or he was, doing something kind of like not playing great for some reason. And, in the middle of the game, they kind of clipped to the bench and Luka was like, they were all kind of talking to him on the bench and you could see that Luka was frustrated and he said something along the lines. The only thing I really understood with that he was like, come on, man. And I was just thinking, oof. I think that there is a possibility. And again, I don't want to speculate on locker room dynamics. And, Luka seems like a good guy, but he wants to win. And I think that he's getting frustrated that Ayton is not the center he's used to playing with. And not just that he's not like the archetype, but just that he doesn't play with the same level of intensity, right? He doesn't play with that same level of like, I want to win. And, I've seen a lot of Laker commentators talk about this and it's just kind of becoming clear that he is not the answer probably at center for the future of the Lakers. Like he does not fit that defensive anchor box. He does not fit the lob threat box. He does not fit a lot of boxes that they need him to fit. And at the beginning of the season, like he was kind of showing that maybe they could make it work, but I think that that's becoming increasingly questionable with his recent performances. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I've even seen people question, will the Lakers end up making a trade for a center? Like, do they really need to only focus on a 3-and-D wing? Like, everyone knows that they need that, but do they also need a new center? Should they include that? So we'll see. That's something to monitor, but I do think that it's becoming more and more concerning with every game, DeAndre Ayton's performances. So we'll see about that. But moving on from Lakerland, let's talk a little bit about the Nuggets and the fact that they are just going through it right now. Obviously, Jokic is out for a month after he hyperextended his knee, and I also believe he might have a bone bruise or something like that. But they have somehow been winning. Oh, and also forgot to mention, Valanciunas immediately got injured, basically right after that happened. And he's also out for a month with the calf strain. Calf strain's just the new hip injury in the NBA. But yeah, he's also out. Obviously, Cam Johnson is still out. He's gonna be out 4 to 6 weeks. I don't remember exactly when he was injured. I think it's been a little bit already, but he's gonna be out for this foreseeable future, and they have basically been playing their hospital lineup. I think that Braun and what is his name? Gordon are finally back, but they're on limited minutes still. But they've been pulling out some wins. They beat the 76ers. They beat the Celtics the other day. So, hey, we'll see what happens with them. I think that they need to, I saw somebody say they need to win 5 games at least without Jokic. They've already won 2. So, hey, that's not too bad. But they do kind of have a tough schedule coming up. They have some easy games, some tougher games. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll see. Are they going to slow down from the injuries, or are they going to pull through? We'll see. But that obviously, as we all know, and as we've been talking about in the West, just a few games could make a big difference. So we'll see what happens with that. Rockets also hit by the injury bug. Şengün is out for 2 weeks with a sprained ankle. Again, they also have some tough games. They lost to the Blazers the other day, but they play the Blazers twice. They play OKC, they play the Wolves, the Spurs, the 76ers. That's kind of a tough stretch, right? And they do have some easier games, but they still have, quite a few tough teams on that schedule. So we'll see what happens with them. And it's basically the same conversation, right? All it takes is a few games to slip to fall in the Western Conference. And, for you to be looking back at that in April and saying that cost us our seed. So we'll see what happens. But, I think at the end of the day, these are going to be the top teams in the West regardless. So it's just going to come down to better favorable matchups and hoping you don't fall into the play-in. So we'll see what happens with that. The Wolves and the Suns both beat OKC. And I'm kind of starting to ask myself, I think the Wolves are probably going to stay at 6. That's been my prediction. I think they're going to stay at 6. But the Suns, can they be an upset threat in the playoffs? As it is right now, they would play the Warriors in the play-in. I think that they could beat the Warriors, honestly. Unless they really pull through, even despite Steph Curry heroics, I would give it a 50-50 chance for them to beat the Warriors, and maybe even a little bit better. Like I just said earlier, if they are the 8 seed and they end up playing Minnesota in the first, sorry, not Minnesota, OKC in the first round, could they upset OKC? I don't know. Could they upset the Spurs? Maybe. We'll see. I don't see them making a real playoff push, but if you told me that they somehow got out of the first round, at this point, I wouldn't really be surprised. They've been playing really well. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And also, we will see what happens with the Warriors. They continue to be mid. Steph Curry is playing out of his mind. He is playing elite basketball, but that does not seem to be enough. And we'll see if they end up trading Kuminga. We'll see what happens with them, but they got to do something. And we'll see. Maybe they can get another scorer somehow. I've been seeing some people say, maybe they'll get MPJ, Michael Porter Jr., but we'll see what happens, because I think that they need to do something if they want any hope of doing anything in the playoffs. And the Clippers, that's kind of the last team I want to talk about in the West. They've been playing well. They have been winning. Kawhi is going off. He literally got a career high 55 points. But my thing with the Clippers is, obviously, first of all, they're still up quite a few games back on the higher West teams. I think they're pretty much playing for the play-in at this point. But the thing about the Clippers, did everyone just forget about the Aspiration scandal? If you guys have been watching this podcast, you probably remember, because we did multiple episodes covering this. If you don't remember, it was the big scandal that they were paying Kawhi under the table through this fake tree planting business and circumventing the cap and paying him up to $40 million extra basically above his contract. This huge scandal that's currently still being investigated, and by the way, is supposed to be concluded like somewhere around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit after. So I just kind of think it's crazy that I've not seen anybody talking about it. Like, people are like, oh, Kawhi is amazing. Will Kawhi get traded? I'm like, who is trading for Kawhi right now? Like, that is crazy to me. This guy could literally be suspended. Like, he could be kicked off the team. So I am very hesitant on taking any Clipper stock whatsoever, any Kawhi stock, until that whole situation is resolved. We'll see if justice is served. We'll see if they find nothing in the, investigation, because obviously I think it's already kind of being covered up. And I know everyone loves billionaire extraordinaire Steve Ballmer. So we'll see what happens. But I just want to remind you guys, in case you forget, like, that is still a thing. So just remember that when we're talking about the Clippers, and especially Kawhi. Now let's move on to the East. Obviously, there's not always as much to talk about in the East, but there is quite a few things. First of all, the Pistons. The Pistons are the real deal, guys. I was talking last week about, like, can the Pistons lose the 1 seed to the Knicks? I don't think that's happening, honestly, anymore. Like, I think that they are keeping the 1 seed. And I'm still kind of questioning, like, will this be another reiteration of the Cavs from last year, where, like, they got the 1 seed, but they didn't make it to even the Eastern Conference Finals? And we'll see. But to me, I think that this Pistons team has, like, what they need to be that team. Like, they're very much cut from that same OKC Spurs cloth, right? Like, they're very much cut from that cloth of, like, young, fast, athletic teams that are gritty and will do what is required to win and can play good defense. So we'll see. But I actually am really buying into Pistons stock now. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I actually think that they will stay on top. They're currently 3 games ahead of the second seed. Wait for it. Celtics. The second seed, Celtics. Yeah, the Celtics are officially the second seed, guys. And it's crazy. Yeah, not the Knicks, the Celtics. It's so funny because, I saw this meme of, like, the Knicks. This is, like, the year that they literally have bigger expectations from ever. Or, for, like, the last, like, 40 years at least. And the Celtics, this is basically the lowest expectations they've ever had. And somehow they are above them in the standings. Second seed. It's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I mean, just the other day, the Pistons beat the Knicks by 30, guys. So I'm not convinced a playoff matchup will go well for the Knicks. I honestly think that the Knicks should trade for Giannis. Like, if that is possible, I know Giannis is saying, like, I'm not going to go anywhere. I would never request a trade. I can't do the Greek accent. You know what I mean? That's what he's been saying lately, is I would never request a trade from here. I would never do that. I'm just an employee of the Bucks. And it's like, bro, be for real. Like, that sounded more like Jokic than Giannis. But yeah, if he gets traded, I think that New York should really consider it, especially because they've been struggling. They've lost, like, multiple games in a row. I think they're, like, 4 in a row now that they've lost. I think that they play today, so I haven't seen the score of that yet. They could win again, but they've been without Josh Hart, and clearly that's making a huge difference for them. Cat has been struggling. He only had 6 points their last game, 1 rebound. Imagine being 7 foot tall and getting 1 rebound. That's the even crazier part to me, because I'm like, okay, I can understand having an off game offensively. I mean, 6 points still seems a little egregious, but 1 rebound, bro? Like, are you even trying? So I just feel like it's like, how can you tell me that Giannis is not better than that? And their owner, James Dolan, he's saying that they're really happy with the team and that they wouldn't trade for Giannis and they wouldn't trade anybody. But I'm like, yeah, cap. Or it should be, at least. Like, either you don't want to win, you're delusional, or you're crazy. One of the two. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, the Celtics, guys, they are just one of the biggest surprises in the East, and they look good. And with Tatum coming back eminently, perhaps in March, maybe late March, or maybe at least for the playoffs, they could be really scary. And we'll see what happens. Like, we'll see what happens with Tatum and his kind of ramp up, and if he's actually able to make a return in April. Obviously, I don't think they want to necessarily push it. But at this point, I would not be surprised if he is pushing himself to do it, because, yeah, they look really good. And if he can even be 70% Jason Tatum, like Jaylen Brown's playing great, he can keep playing 1. If Jason Tatum can actually come back and play 2, and even just, again, be like 70% of himself for now, they could make some real noise in the East, right? It's the East. So that's pretty much all I want to cover for the East for right now. I feel like there hasn't been anything too crazy other than that, other than Trae Young getting traded to the Wizards, which is kind of funny. And obviously, he just wanted to get the bag, right? You know, in the beginning of the season, Anthony was so high on Trae Young and was like, oh my God, he's an MVP candidate. Like, that's what he was telling me at the beginning of the year. Like, he could honestly win MVP. Atlanta is going to be in the top 3. And I thought he was crazy. And clearly, maybe he was a little bit optimistic. Maybe he was taking a little bit too much Trae Young stock. But, you know, apparently so are the Washington Wizards. So I guess he wanted to go there. I mean, that's all the reporting. I think that he wanted to get his bag, and I don't think that he had a very big market. He's getting paid like $46 million this year, and I think next year has a player option for like $49 million. And, you know, in today's NBA, there's only a certain amount of teams willing to pay that, and clearly the Washington Wizards were one of the only ones. So, to quote Luka, who was asked by this, if he's happy, I'm happy about it. So, good for him. But what other trades will we see, guys? I think that's going to be the next question. Like, we'll see. Maybe next week there'll be another crazy trade. This one wasn't that crazy, but, you know, now Atlanta's saying they want Anthony Davis. Will he get traded to Atlanta? Will he get traded somewhere else? Jonathan Kuminga, is he finally going to get traded? A lot of these guys I know are trade eligible on the 15th, which I guess would be before I film the next episode, guys. So we'll see, guys. There could very well be some trades happening that day. And obviously, we all know by the end of January, that's when the real stuff's going to start mixing up. But who knows, guys? Is there going to be an unexpected trade like last year? I don't think anything can top the Luka trade, but will Giannis actually get traded? Like, you know, will there be another crazy trade that nobody sees coming? I don't know, but we'll see. I did predict that Trae Young would get traded, and he did, so I was right on that, but let's see, guys. I don't know. Will these other teams make any trades? Like, will OKC make a trade like we talked about earlier? Like, will they elevate themselves? I mean, OKC could do the craziest thing ever and go get Giannis and pretty much guarantee themselves another championship. Like, would they pull something like that? You know, even someone like the Lakers, like, will they elevate and go to Brooklyn and be like, hey, give us like an athlete and Nick Claxton for freaking Rui and Ayton? And will they completely elevate, you know, and be like a legitimate title contender? We'll see. We will see what happens. It's going to be interesting, guys. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But thank you guys so much for watching. You are a real one if you made it all the way to the end. You know, I really appreciate it, especially when it's all just me, guys, just me yapping. My throat is all sore now from talking. But, you know, I'm a Gemini, so I can kind of go on forever. So it's okay. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure that you let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your opinions. Me and Anthony go back and forth like all day long on all of our thoughts about all this stuff, but you guys could very well think completely differently than we do, and I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. So please do. If you do comment, I will literally mention it in the next video. Like, I will say, one of our lovely commenters, blah, 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 or anonymously if you'd prefer it to be anonymous. And I will share your opinion to be heard to the masses, okay? So please comment. Let us know what you guys think about all this. Like this video. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Again, please, please, please subscribe. It makes such a big difference for us. And please like the video. It literally, like, basically does wonders for the algorithm, and it takes you like 2 seconds. Like, it's one tiny click, click, click. So please do it. If you prefer to listen, again, you can listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok to watch our little clippy clips, the little, you know, excerpts of our videos, the highlights, if you will. We are over there with our highlights and just fun little memes and stuff, so go follow us. And thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye!